Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Man, oh man, what a weekend. Holy smokes, folks. It may well be that I may be the only one, or maybe one of a select few, seeing things the way I see them, because I just ran it by Mr. Snerdley, nut job in there, and he didn't get it. He didn't see it like I saw it. I didn't run it by anybody else, because there are no other nut jobs in there except for Snerdley. Anyway, greetings, my friends. Welcome. It's Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network, ready to go. This is the Memorial Day weekend, and we're going to be here on Friday. We'll not be here a week from today. That is Memorial Day itself, but we will be here on... wait. You're looking at me like I have just dropped it. Oh, you didn't know it was... I thought somehow you guys were not going to be here on Friday in your own minds, and now that I said I'm going to be here, okay. No. Do we want to take Friday off? It's still time to arrange it, find some nut job guest host. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Folks, I have to share with you an observation here. Let me tell you how this came about. Busy weekend. I didn't watch a lot of television until last night. I saw none of the president's... This is important to the observation. I didn't see any of Trump's stuff in Saudi Arabia live. I saw it on tape later. All I saw was textual reporting, websites, newspapers, and this kind of thing. And something struck me. And let me put it to you this way. Have any of you observed the complete, total difference in President Trump on this trip compared to the President Trump in Washington? Let me extrapolate or expand on this. The reporting on Trump, with a few obvious and predictable exceptions, has been over the top positive. Deservedly so. Trump is kicking butt on this trip, if I may say. Trump is defying, once again, all of the odds and all of the things that were predicted about him. If you remember, the left, led by the news media, has been telling us practically from the day that Trump announced his candidacy that he would be a complete disaster, particularly in foreign affairs and foreign relations around the world, and even more particularly in the Middle East. We have been told that Trump is so reckless and so dangerous and so stupid and so uninformed and ill-prepared that he could undo all of the great accomplishments of every president before him combined in less than 1 week. Such a boob is Trump. Trump would destroy any chance that our allies in the Middle East ever had of peace or of working with him. The United States and its precious image around the world would be destroyed by this bull in a china shop. Man. And instead, the news of this weekend, the achievements, the accomplishments, the rave reception that President Trump is getting everywhere he is going, the profound respect. Now, I understand that some of it may be flattery. I understand some of it may be calculated and not all genuine. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, let me just cut to the chase. We're looking at two different presidents here if all we have to go on is the media. When Trump is in Washington, D.C., what is he? He is a genuine idiot. He is impolitic. He's uninformed. He's running a chaotic administration where nobody knows what anybody is doing. Whenever they do anything, it's disastrous. Trump is cruising down the road to impeachment. And yet, on this trip, Trump is being hailed as great and accomplished and appreciated as any previous president has been. Maybe a couple of exceptions on specific items. Now, how can that be? How can the Donald Trump of Washington be such an insufferable boob? So incompetent, so incapable, so impolitic, so brusque, so boorish, so politically incorrect, and yet when he leaves the United States and heads to a foreign country, he becomes the epitome of greatness. He becomes the epitome of restraint. He becomes the epitome of discipline. How can this be? Well, I can give you one really good answer. The Donald Trump of Washington doesn't exist. Because the Donald Trump of Washington is what is reported in the drive-by media. The Donald Trump of Washington ends up being portrayed by all of these news stories that happen to be sourced by anonymous leakers. Every day in Washington at 5:30, there's a new bombshell in the drive-by media from an anonymous source, once again informing us how incompetent, how ill-mannered, how ill-prepared, how in chaos, how out of touch Donald Trump is. We continue to get stories that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, even though there's no evidence. We continue to get stories that Donald Trump is saying the most insulting, stupid things to people, that he's bragging to enemies about his nut job FBI director that he fired. None of it substantiated. None of it is backed up by anybody other than anonymous leaks. But there are no anonymous leaks on this trip to the Middle East. So far, we don't have a single story that tells us that Trump told the king of Saudi Arabia, take the veil off, man. Get into the 21st century and look like a real man. For crying, what are you wearing, Santa? No leaks like this. We haven't had one leak about anything boorish, immature, childish, chaotic, incompetent that Trump has done on this trip. My point is that the Trump on this trip has been seen and shaped as unfiltered. The media has not been able to get themselves between whatever Trump is doing and saying and you. In Washington, it's just the exact opposite. The media is right there between Trump and you. And the media is telling you who Trump is and what he's saying and what he's doing, courtesy of anonymous leaks. But none of this so far on this trip. Now, I know I'm speaking prematurely here. It's entirely possible, in fact, predictable, that it won't be long before these kinds of leaks, because Trump is doing well, folks. Trump is shocking everybody. He's shocking the Democrats. He's shocking the Republicans. He's shocking the world. For example, who knew that Donald Trump was this religious? Contrast what's happened here in just the last 3 days with 8 years of Barack Obama. We have had no apologizing. We've had no bowing. We've had a president of the United States actually tell the heads of state of countries where terrorism is rampant to get rid of it, to drive it out. We've had a president of the United States directly confront Iran, whereas our previous president threw everybody else overboard for Iran. I'll get into more of this in detail as the program unfolds. But stop and think of this. Consider the Trump that you have seen and watched in Saudi Arabia and now in Israel. Contrast that with the president you see and hear reported on in Washington. The two men don't even look remotely similar. This trip should not be possible. The news coming out of this trip should not be possible based on what everybody is saying about Trump in Washington. Incompetent, boorish, impolitic, rude, mean, all of those things. And yet Trump gets off the plane in Saudi Arabia, gets off the plane in Israel, and is overwhelmingly respected and welcomed. and appreciated. And I have to think that it's not all just because he has the title of president. I think it's a stunning contrast. How can these two completely different characters exist? The Donald Trump of Washington and the Donald Trump of this trip. Have you noticed this? Has anybody else noticed this? Is it just me? I mean, I'm maybe it's not as big a deal as I think it is, but it's the first thing that struck me, especially now given it's important to know I didn't watch any of this stuff live. I only read about it. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't reading instant slam dunks and constant criticism and stories making fun of and stories expressing fear. Oh, my God, this man is destroying the world. He's destroying the country. Do you believe what he said to the king? None of that. His wife, Melania Trump, is a huge star on this trip in every which way possible. And she was herself totally in Saudi Arabia, did not bow to local convention. Everything that we have been told to expect from Donald Trump based on the domestic media and the way they've covered and reported on him in Washington, we should have been quaking in our boots. We should have been in fear. Oh, no, what's Trump going to say to these people to hack them off? How's he going to insult them? What inoffensive, selfish, childlike thing is Donald Trump going to say or do? Answer's nothing. There hasn't been anything childlike. There hasn't been anything insulting. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Look, I have seen the Saudis greet American presidents. I've seen them greet George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama. And I'm telling you, I haven't seen what I saw this weekend. I've not seen it, folks. All these think tank experts in Washington at the Woodrow Wilson Center. It's really, really a dangerous thing. It's just not right. The President of the United States should never, ever make his first foreign trip to the Middle East. Never, ever. Why not, Mr. Think Tank Special? Because it's too fraught with potential disaster. Because President Trump clearly is not sophisticated enough to know the idiosyncrasies, the customs, and the requirements. It's just too great a potential. The president needs to get more seasoning, travel other places for no president. That's right, no president ever has. Do you know that there has never been a direct flight from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to Tel Aviv until Trump did it? Never. Now, granted, it wasn't a commercial flight. We've got the Prime Minister of Egypt, the President of Egypt, saying that Trump is uniquely equipped to do great things. The Saudis are so happy. People don't understand. The Saudi Arabian government, kingdom, hates Iran. They're scared to death of Iran. That's Shia versus Sunni Muslim. And the Iranians are Persians. They're not Arabs. So it's a double whammy. There is no love lost, and the Saudis have been petrified over Barack Obama's peace dance and nuclear dealings with the nation of Iran. They are ecstatic to have Donald Trump. They were ecstatic to hear Donald Trump single out Iran. I know, but Rush, he didn't say radical Islamic. So he got close enough, folks, but Rush, Saudi Arabia, they worldwide terrorism. Yeah, but Trump went there and tackled it. You compare this to Obama's mindless, twattering, whatever it was, the Cairo speech. Nobody can still tell you what he said. I think we'll get into all of this in detail as far as the comments that were made. We have audio sound bites coming up. But the contrast is striking to me. Two completely different presidents. One of them on display, unfiltered for everybody to see. That's in Saudi Arabia and now Israel. And the other one is in Washington, where everything written, broadcast, and said is written by anonymous sources in the deep state with no evidence of anything that they're saying. This is leading to a major problem in the Democrat Party. I mentioned this on Friday. You know, there's stories out there that the Democrats are starting to slowly walk back the idea that Trump's going to be impeached. Do you know why that is? It's because there isn't any evidence and there isn't any crime that Trump has committed that anybody has been able to find, and they won't find one. But the Democrat Party and the media, primarily the media, has created a genuine insane asylum that is the Democrat base. The Democrat base believes that Trump colluded with the Russians. The Democrat base believes that the Russians stole the election from Hillary. They believe it because that's what they've been told solidly for 9 months. They believe it. They have been driven insane. The media, irresponsibly carrying this narrative, has created a very volatile and dangerous situation because at some point, it is going to be revealed that there isn't anything. And what are these lunatics going to do? They are, just as they expected Hillary to win in a landslide because their media told them that, and the media told them that their polls were showing it, and the media lied to them about this, that, and the other. They lied to them about how Trump was going to be negatively affected by all the things he was saying. They're being lied to each and every day, and those lies become more intense. They enlarge, they get bigger, and they become more frequent. And the left lunatic base, which includes these judges, how about these judges who issued stays on Trump's travel order because he hates Muslims? How does that wash with this weekend? Anyway, I'm just getting warmed up here, folks. Have to take a break. We'll be back. Yeah, no, I'll tell you something else. Hang on a minute. Stupid screensaver's on again. There's a list of about 5 things in this studio if I could fix. I'd stop the show and do it. They're distracting. It is true, ladies and gentlemen, drive-by media is not spending a lot of time covering the Trump trip. The cameras are on. And if you know where to go, you can watch the speeches. But you're not seeing a lot of this at CNN. You're not seeing a lot of this at PMSNBC. And there is not a whole lot of reporting on this in the New York Times. The reason is they don't want to write or televise any of this because it's in such stark contrast to the pictures they've been painting of Trump. It's so incongruent. It's so inconsistent. Of course, the other reason why, the last thing in the world they want, don't forget what is driving a lot of this. In addition to all else, it is the protection of the Barack Obama legacy. Do not ever doubt me on that. These people have a personal attachment to Obama and his presidency and his legacy. And so Trump, that's just another of many reasons why Trump has to be diminished, destroyed, impugned, or what have you. But this trip is so phenomenally successful, so phenomenally positive, that they can't report it because it doesn't fit with the Trump whom they have painted in the last 6 or so months. But it's still getting out there. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program today. All right, now here's an example of a I think a pretty significant achievement, at least effort, and a fake news attempt to destroy it. Story from the Wall Street Journal. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates pledge $100 million to World Bank's Women Entrepreneurs Fund. Donation to be announced at an event with Ivanka Trump, an advocate for business women who proposed the fund. That's where it goes off track. But wait. Stop and think of what's happening here. I wonder how I don't know how many people know the way women are treated in strict Sharia Islamist countries. They are at best second-class citizens. They have to wear something on their head and on their faces in public. They can only speak if their husbands grant them permission. They can't drive unless they're accompanied. Basically, they have no freedom whatsoever. They are, under Sharia, they are not co-equal. And yet here is Donald Trump taking that issue, subject of equal rights, particularly for women, to a part of the world which you would think would not only reject it, but would warn him not to even go there. If you want a good trip with us, if you want to have this trip into being okay, you don't even go to the way we run our country, our affairs, our culture. You stay with that's not what happened. Trump went to the Middle East and made women's entrepreneurial endeavors a major issue. It is a more pro-women thing than Barack Obama ever attempted in this part of the world. Yet we will not hear a word about it from America's feminists or the American left. It turns out, however, I'm not going to get into the details of the story. There's a fake news reaction to this. Journalists are spreading false news about, fake news about Ivanka Trump on this particular issue. It was big on Twitter over the weekend. It was totally fake news. There is no Ivanka fund. Neither she nor her family manage, benefit, or have any control over this fund that they are setting up. It is totally unlike the Clinton family and its foundation. The money will actually go toward a fund called Women's Entrepreneurs Fund, which is run by the World Bank. It's not going to be run by Ivanka. Now, look, I know we can talk about being run by the World Bank. That's my point here is that this is something that no previous president has really seriously tried, is to tackle the cultural inequality that exists in this part of the world. So the fake news on Twitter was that Ivanka Trump was engaged in pay-to-play with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and it started in the Wall Street Journal story I just headlined for you. Saudi Arabia, UAE, pledge $100 million to World Bank's Women Entrepreneurs Fund. Says that Ivanka proposed the creation of the fund, but she didn't. She doesn't control it. She doesn't raise money for it. Some were even tweeting that its name was Ivanka's Women Entrepreneurs Fund. Reporters picked up that tweet. CNN wrote that this is virtually identical to what Trump and others in the GOP criticized the Clinton Foundation for. It's not even close. So there has been an attempt at fake news, but it blew up. The Egyptian president, Al-Sisi, gave President Trump the ultimate compliment yesterday, saying he was capable of doing the impossible. Complimented Trump during remarks which drew smiles and laughs from the crowd. He said, "Mr. President, let me express our appreciation and respect. Let me say you have a unique personality that is capable of doing the impossible." This is irritating like you cannot believe to the media covering this thing. But the president of Egypt said it, so there's no way they can mask it. They can no way distort it. He said it. They report it. TheHill.com, Trump receives Saudi Arabia's highest civilian honor. Trump to Muslim world, drive the terrorists out of this earth. He took it to them. He took it to them in a way that nobody could object to. It was not insulting. It was not an attempt to control or impose our values on anybody. It was an attempt to remind everybody of basic humanity and how we're all called to it. Sample, audio sound bites. Start here with number 9, this Sunday in Riyadh at the Arab Islamic American Summit.
There is still much work to be done. That means honestly confronting the crisis of Islamic extremism and the Islamists and Islamic terror of all kinds. We must stop what they're doing to inspire, because they do nothing to inspire but kill. Religious leaders must make this absolutely clear. Barbarism will deliver you no glory. Piety to evil will bring you no dignity. If you choose the path of terror, your life will be empty, your life will be brief, and your soul will be fully condemned. And political leaders must speak out to affirm the same idea. Heroes don't kill innocents, they save them.
This has not been said by an American president to an audience of leaders of countries which export radical Islamic terror. They may say it in other venues, they may say it platitudes and so forth, but never face-to-face, publicly like this, that I can recall. And when they have, well, they haven't. Obama, of course, went just the exact opposite way and started blaming the victims for terrorism as, well, there's an understanding of why we must understand why these people do what they do. There's outrage. Remember, all the people have told us rampant poverty in the Middle East, which is, of course, the fault of the United States. Rampant poverty is what creates terrorism, or Abu Ghraib creates terrorism, or Guantanamo Bay creates terrorism, or attempting to put terrorists in jail creates terrorism and recruits all of these things. Barack Obama never took it to him. Barack Obama never pointed and said, this is the problem, this is where it starts. And Obama never, I don't know of anybody who challenged the basic precept that all of this terrorism is martyrdom, that it leads to salvation in paradise. Trump told him the exact opposite. And he told the clerics and the imams to stop it. Here's the next bite. Same speech, Arab Islamic American Summit in Riyadh on Sunday.
The nations of the Middle East will have to decide what kind of future they want for themselves, for their country, and frankly, for their families and for their children. It's a choice between two futures, and it is a choice America cannot make for you. A better future is only possible if your nations drive out the terrorists and drive out the extremists. Drive them out. Drive them out of your places of worship. Drive them out of your communities. Drive them out of your holy land. And drive them out of this earth.
And do not wait for American power to do it. You must take the lead. One more soundbite, same speech.
America is a sovereign nation, and our first priority is always the safety and security of our citizens. We are not here to lecture. We are not here to tell other people how to live, what to do, who to be, or how to worship. Instead, we are here to offer partnership based on shared interests and values to pursue a better future.
Well, so we're not here to lecture. We're not here to tell other people how to live. But he just did, in a sense. He said, get rid of the extremists. Get rid of them. And I want just one little comparison. We're going to go back to 2009. June 4th, Barack Hussein is in Cairo University, with his famous Cairo speech, which I defy anybody, even a scholar in the Middle East, to come on this program and tell me what he said. What did he say? Do you remember the Cairo speech? What did he say? Well, let's listen to a bit. It's only a half a minute here, folks. Don't sweat it.
I consider it part of my responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear.
Really?
Just as Muslims do not fit a crude stereotype,
really,
America is not the crude stereotype of a self-interested empire. Given our interdependence, any world order that elevates one nation or a group of people over another will inevitably fail.
What the hell is that? His first responsibility as president is to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear. Given our interdependence, any world order that elevates one nation or group of people over another will inevitably fail. Wrong-o. Wrong-o. We're all not equal. We are all not the same. We're all not as powerful. We are all not equally weak. We are not all just. We are not all moral. We are not all identical. We are not all the same. And the only way in Obama, in his world, the only way every nation and everybody else can be the same is if you take the people at the top and rip them apart. Take the people at the top, the achievers in anything, nationhood, academics, athletics, and take them down. Never, ever elevate. Got a break. We'll be back. Don't go away. Hi, welcome back. Rush Limbaugh, doing what I was born to do, and that's why I'm having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Grabbed soundbite number 14. So Trump over the weekend, trust me on this, don't doubt me, the Trump administration is going to do everything it can to deny the Iranians nuclear weapons. They're going to do everything they can, even though the Obama administration struck a deal that leads to that very thing. The Saudis, if you don't know, are arch enemies with the Iranians. It's Sunni versus Shia Islam, number one. Number two, the Iranians are not Arabs per se, they're Persians. Both nations have extremist sects. In Saudi Arabia, it's Wahhabism. In Iranian, it's just flat. Iran, it's just flat out uber terrorism, state-sponsored all over the world. So, Saudi Arabia has radical imams that engage in this as well. And the Saudi royal family runs the grand mosques at Mecca and so forth. So their hands are not clean and so forth. This is an example of you need to make friends with nations that are not perfect and do not necessarily reflect every value you have. And it all is based on exigent circumstances at a particular place and time. Obama, of course, chose Iran. And here, grab audio soundbite number 14. This, I never forget how infuriated I was when I first heard it.
In the middle of the Cold War, the United States played a role in the overthrow of a democratically elected Iranian government. Now, I understand those who protest that some countries have weapons that others do not.
Yeah.
No single nation should pick and choose which nation holds nuclear weapons.
There you go.
And that's why I strongly reaffirmed America's commitment to seek a world in which no nations hold nuclear weapons.
That's from the Cairo speech. Of course, that's all bogus. He's just seen to it that the Iranians can get nuclear weapons. But the point here is, this was a swipe at the United States. A swipe at the idea that the United States is the world leader, superpower for freedom and liberty. This is the thing that forever frustrated me about Obama. Not recognizing American exceptionalism. We are the beacon of freedom and liberty. If we don't stand for it, it isn't going to survive anywhere else because it's never existed in the world like it does here. That's American exceptionalism. The world has never known the freedom and liberty it did until the United States, some 230 years ago. And if that light is extinguished, then it's over for the rest of the world as well. There's nowhere else. We must do this in order to protect our own liberty and freedom. This has been a tenet of American foreign policy from the beginning, the recognition of liberty and freedom as essential to the human condition as created by God. And here's Obama saying, no nation gets to decide what other nations do. That's what world leadership is. An unwillingness to point at bad guys and say they're the bad guys and to keep the bad guys from getting worse. That's leadership. Obama didn't want to go there. In Obama's world, the Iranians were victims of a haughty and egotistic United States that thought it had all the answers, but the United States that had slavery, the United States that had discrimination. And who were we? So in his mind, there was no such thing as American exceptionalism, and there was a moral equivalence. We were no better than Iran. Iran was no better than us, which is asinine. Let me grab a call quickly. Sandra, Omaha, great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for taking my call. I cannot tell you how excited and thrilled my whole family is. My boys have been trying to get a hold of you since December. They just love your show, love your books. We homeschool, and you are just amazing.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, really do.
Now, what caught my attention this morning was when you were talking about not being able to see, and I'm sorry, I'm trying not to be emotional because this really does get to me, is that, I watched every bit of live stream that I possibly could on this trip that the president is on right now, and I am so amazed at how respected and revered they're treating him, and I thought to myself, why are not our American people giving him that same respect and honor that this man is just doing so much for our country? And it was just, I sat there all week and I thought, what is wrong with this picture? And I thought, then it just hit me. I thought, you know what? He's completely removed himself from that toxic environment in Washington, and there's no leaks this weekend.
There you go.
And when you said what you said, I thought that's exactly what I was thinking, and I thought, thank you so much. Thank you so very much for
I can't tell you, Sylvia. I've got to interrupt. Sandra, I'm sorry. I've had a number of people tell me, same observation you've had, how amazing it is that Donald Trump's being respected more in that part of the world than by even members of his own party, much less the Democrats. But all of Washington. Yes, we will talk about this. Thank you so much, Sandra. I have to go, but we'll be back. It has been striking. I have had a lot of people send me notes expressing the shock at how much respect Trump is getting over there versus how little he gets here, especially in his own party. Anyway, where'd the first hour go? We've got more coming up. Stay with us. once again and routinely meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. It's Rush Limbaugh, your guiding light. The epitome of morality and virtue. A man you could and would trust with your wife, your daughter, your dogs, your cats, overnight in a Motel 6 while you happen to be at a 5-star Ritz. 800-282-2882 if you want to be in the program. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Trump did another first on this trip in Israel today. He is the first, he made history, he's the first sitting president to visit the Western Wall. Now, other presidents have been there as candidates or after they retired, but none before Trump ever as a sitting president. George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Hussein, all visited either when they were candidates or as private citizens. And none of them were accompanied by the Israeli prime minister. Now, an interesting thing about this, Trump and Melania went to the Western Wall today, and men and women go to different areas of the wall. The Prime Minister, Bibi, it's Benjamin Ben Bibi, to people like me, his friends, Bibi wanted to go with Trump, and Trump said no. Respectfully, no. This is a personal thing for me. I don't want this to appear to be a political event. And so the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, was there but did not accompany Trump as he personally visited the wall. It's customary to write a small message and find a place in the wall to plug it. And those messages are there for eternity. I have visited this place. 5-day whirlwind trip back in 1993. And it's someplace everybody should be able to go. Whatever your faith. The Holy Land is someplace everybody should be able to go. Nothing like actually being there and seeing it after having read and seen so much about it. So the president's going to have dinner tonight with the President Melania will have dinner with Netanyahu and his wife at Netanyahu's home, which is not part of the governmental complex. I've been there, too. Let me tell you, I've got it. It's been since it's 1993 since I've told some of these stories. I'll make this real brief. I got a chance to go in 1993 as it was a combination religious trip and political trip. It was an opportunity to meet leaders of the day in Israel, go to the Knesset, but also visit some of the famed religious sites. It was a fight of Mossad briefings, private Mossad briefings up to the Golan Heights, interviews with all of these people, and it was just these 5 days probably were worth a couple years in college on this subject. And they had obviously been briefed. These Israeli leaders had been briefed on who I was. Obviously, what happened. We met Yitzhak Rabin, who could not have been more gracious and outgoing and friendly. But when it came time to meet Shimon Peres, this was the weirdest thing. There was my entourage, if you will. People like me travel. There's always a bunch of hangers-on. And so the hangers-on, the entourage, were all ushered in to each dignitary's office. And then the hangers-on, the hitchhikers, I call them, were then excused from the room while I and my immediate advisors had meetings with these people. When Shimon Peres, it was nice as he could be, but he kept, while he was seated, he kept undoing his belt buckle. Sat there, undid the belt buckle, and then tightened it a bit and redid it, and do it again and loosen it while he was speaking. And he started talking about how we're destroying all the trees in the world. Not we, not me, but we're destroying all the trees. And it didn't take me long to, this guy's been told that I am a Reaganite right-winger, and so he's jabbing me. You know, he's jabbing me. And it was We had a guy on our trip when we were leaving the Israeli government compound. There was a car alarm going off. Whenever there's an alarm anywhere near that, you skedaddle, you seek cover. So they hustled us out. And as we got in our transportation, we were leaving it. That was Shimon Peres's car. His alarm was no problem at all. Later that day, we were leaving the Knesset after having met with the Speaker of the Knesset, which is, of course, their version of the United States Congress. And in walks Shimon Peres. And one of the people traveling with me, I wished I could shrink to invisible. One of the people traveling with me said, "Hey, buddy, did you get your car alarm fixed?" Oh, no, I'm very in my... Oh, no, this isn't happening. No. And Perez maintained total aplomb and dignity and just looked at this guy like... And he said, "You are more informed than I. I have no idea to which that you refer." "Oh, yeah, we were leaving your office and the car alarm is, I just hope you got it fixed." And Perez looked at me with a look like, "I hope I never see you again." We were off. And we've been talking about that. A couple of things like that happen on trip. They always do. But it's an amazing... Trump also went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That is... Well, the whole thing that Trump is doing is... I've done it. And for him to do it as a president in his first trip abroad says a lot about the things on his mind in terms of American foreign policy. And it's consistent. Terrorism has been at the top of his list and wiping out ISIS. And he's told every leader of every nation he's spoken to, we're going to drive them out. Other presidents go to the UN and make platitudinous speeches about these kinds of things. I'm not trying to oversell this. Don't misunderstand. I just think I haven't seen it too much if it's happened where a United States president takes it to these people face to face and does it in an unoffensive, in total contrast to the way Trump is portrayed. I mean, you can find stories here, Trump surprisingly presidential, Trump surprisingly reverential, Trump surprisingly competent, Trump surprisingly in command. The only reason it's surprising is because of the way Trump is presented in the American media while at home. Anyway, I want to move on to something else here, folks, before we get back to your phone calls. Late last week, Thursday and Friday, there appeared in various media stories about how 1, 2, and then 3 prominent Democrats expressed the need for the Democrat Party to start walking back all this talk of impeachment. First, it was just one, and then another one. And it ended up being 3 people. Don't remember their names right off the bat. Doesn't matter. And it caught my attention, obviously. Why walk back this notion of impeachment? And there were 2 reasons. One reason is there isn't a crime here. Despite all of this irresponsible reporting, there isn't a crime. And there isn't any collusion. Second thing is just that. There are people who have, over the course of the last 3 weeks, on the Democrat side, have tiptoed into the water and said, we haven't any evidence. Dianne Feinstein to Wolf Blitzer twice, for example. So there was another Democrat on Grassley's committee that, we don't have any. We haven't seen any evidence yet. Former CIA director for Obama, Michael Morrell, about 2 weeks ago, was on MSNBC. Said there isn't any evidence of any collusion. So they've been tiptoeing around this. And you put that together with the talk by the Democrats, they need to walk back impeachment. What do you have? You have, I think, a potentially explosive and destructive thing awaiting the Democrats. What have they done? Let's go back to the campaign. Why did everybody think that Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide? Particularly her supporters. And her campaign. They were so confident they didn't even campaign in states they thought were a lock. They were arrogant, overly confident. And why? Because they believed their own media. They believed the drive-by media, who, by the way, leads them. They believed the drive-by media polls. They believed all of the stories about Trump and his boorishness, and they believed that the American people were repulsed by it and were rejecting it. And they ignored 20,000, 25,000 at Trump rallies as insignificant, inconsequential. Crowd size doesn't matter at all in politics. And they weren't just lied to for a couple of weeks. They were lied to for the entire campaign. Even during the Podesta email meltdown, even during the WikiLeaks, even during all of this, they were repeatedly assured. They were guaranteed. Nate Silver's out there saying, oh, yeah, 85, 90% chance Hillary wins. They believed it, lock, stock, and barrel. They thought it was a slam dunk. They were lied to. Their own media set them up. Their own media lied to them. Their own media told stories they hoped would end up being true. They reported things that were not true that they hoped people would believe about Trump. They assured their own supporters that there was no way Trump could win. This was going to be an historic landslide and a great victory for the Democrats. The first woman ever to crack the glass ceiling in politics and head all the way into the Oval Office to be Hillary Rodham Clinton, even though Mrs. Clinton has shown no evidence of such electoral prominence and victory, other than her Senate seat in New York, which Democrats don't lose in New York. But then the unexpected happened, the inexplicable, the impossible, and Donald Trump did win. And in the Electoral College, it was handily won. So what happened next? 24 hours later, a narrative was recreated. And that narrative was that the Russians colluded with Trump to steal the election from Hillary, that the Russians hacked our elections, that the Russians stole the election. The election was commandeered by Trump working with Putin. The Democrat Party picked up the story and ran with it. The drive-by media picked up the story and ran with it, all during the transition, to the point that everybody in the Democrat Party in the country to this day really believes that there was collusion. They really believe that Trump stole the election working with Hillary. They have been convinced because they've been lied to. They believe it. It is not their ideology leading them to this belief. It is not their desire. They've been told. Their media, everywhere, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, the Los Angeles Times, multiple times a day, since November the 10th, have been telling the people of this country the election was stolen. It was corrupted by Trump and the Russians. During the transition, additional sources were added from the deep state, anonymous sources, intelligence community sources, who said that the evidence they were looking at, they weren't looking at evidence. There were reports, there were leaks, there were suspicions. By the time we get to the present day, how many anonymous sources since last November alone must there have been pushing this lie? The New York Times reports, or maybe it's the Washington Post, one of the two, 30 different anonymous sources on this one story, one newspaper. This lie has been told over and over again. It has been buttressed. It has been supplanted. It has been expanded. There are more anonymous sources. There are additional sources now from overseas. We had that fake dossier That was treated as real by the drive-by media. My point is, the Democrat Party and the media have lied for now 9 consecutive months. And don't forget the involvement of the FBI director. The FBI director, who was originally hated, is now loved and adored because it is just known he's got evidence. Oh, yeah. And what's her name? Sally Yates. She had evidence. She was going to blow it up. She didn't have any evidence. Comey's the next. He's got the evidence. He's going to blow Trump out of the water. He doesn't have the evidence. Comey's already said there isn't any evidence. Clapper has said there isn't any evidence. A bunch of Democrats have tiptoed in. We don't have any evidence. They've always said yet. So there are some literally dangerously imbalanced leftists who are already protesting and causing threats and riots at town halls. The FCC director has people peering into his windows trying to get an idea of the layout of his home. This is Ajit Pai. The Democrat Party, the American media, has literally created an insane asylum that has no walls. And the people in this insane asylum, who are genuinely, truly unbalanced, have been made this way by having been fed a diet of raw hatred for the last 9 months. Now, of course, they've been fed this raw hatred for decades, but in the intense specifics of this election and the collusion with the Russians, they have been fed lies and distortions and rumors as fact. They have created a brimming, a burgeoning, an effervescing raw hatred that has yet had no outlet for expression. It's bubbling up and it's waiting to explode. And the Democrats are scared to death of the day they have to make it official. There was no collusion. There was no evidence. There will be no impeachment. That's why they're trying to walk back impeachment, because they're scared to death of what they've created. They can't control it. It is an uncorralled monster of genuine, insane lunatics that is the Democrat base. Sneak a quick call in here. This is Rachel in Baltimore. Thank you for calling. Great to have you on the program. How are you?
Hi, Russ. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Yes.
I got to stay true to my word. I told him I would say it. You be nice to Snerdley. I heard that comment at the beginning. You be nice.
What? Oh, you mean the nut job? Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you. I'm properly... You want me to spank myself?
That's okay.
Okay.
I'm not into violence. I also wanted to just thank you because you guys sent my kids the most amazing Rush Revere package a while back, and they loved it, and it was awesome.
Thank you.
I've always, kind of listened. I listen to you, and I'm a reformed liberal, and so I used to, I listened to NPR and the other things. I used to like some of the human interest stories and so forth, and I did my best to recognize the indoctrination when it was, when they were forcing it down. But I can't even bring myself to listen to any news. Not even Fox anymore. I feel like everybody has become just unhinged, and I feel like they don't even try to mask their, used to kind of be sly about getting their opinions in. It's no longer, it's so
there's no subtlety at all. It's just hammer time. Hammer every day.
It's sick, and so I feel like I no longer listen to anything, and I think that there's a lot of people like that. And
I think there are too. I keep, it's all anecdotal, but I hear from quite a few people when I observe it. I'm not watching it, me either. And I think it's wise. I think it's good for your mental health to stay away from some of this crap. It's so intense. It's never ending. It's always there, and they're always trying to add to it. I think you're wise to ignore most of it.
It's painful to listen to it. It's also just depressing just to feel like this guy can't get a fair shot. Anyways. And then my last point I just was going to say is that I think that the best thing personally for Trump to do at this point is just to keep on plugging away at accomplishing his agenda.
Exactly right. That's my recipe too. Joint press conference between President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu just concluded. Let me summarize this for you. It's a completely different Netanyahu than the Netanyahu we saw with Barack Obama. I'll tell you what I remember about it was either the first or second trip to the White House by Netanyahu. Obama was rude. He was offensive. And some would even say mean-spirited. I don't know how many of you remember this. And I think this was the second trip. Doesn't matter which one. I just think it was the second trip. Obama and Netanyahu and their various aides are working on something. I don't know what it was. Doesn't matter. And abruptly, Obama got up and said to Netanyahu, I'm leaving. I have to go have dinner with my family. You stay here. You keep working on this, and I'll come back afterwards and see where you are. Honest, folks, it happened. The White House very proud of that. They made sure that news got out, disrespecting the Prime Minister of Israel. That was a big plus for Obama with his buddies around the world and this lunatic Democrat base. Remember when Netanyahu came to the United States, addressed the joint session of Congress on the danger of the American-Iran deal? That infuriated Obama. He tried to get that speech canceled, but he couldn't because the Speaker of the House is who extends such invitations. The President, the White House, has nothing to say. Separation of powers, after all, about who addresses joint sessions of Congress. That's totally up to the Speaker of the House and the leader of the Senate. So Netanyahu showed up and he delivered a stem-winding, bar-burner, anti-Iran deal. It was, without names being mentioned, a huge slap at Obama's policy. Well, the Netanyahu that I just saw watching out of the corner of my eye is a completely different Netanyahu. He just flat out expressed his appreciation and adoration for Trump. He thanked Trump for the deep commitment Trump and America have to Israel. He openly stated at this joint pressure how much he appreciates the change in American policy. And when what was maybe one of the most important observations, he said how much he appreciates the reassertion of America into the Middle East and policy. And he slammed Obama again. It was subtle. I mean, he didn't come out and say Obama sucks or that, but he was very, very clear. Did it in a diplomatic way. I think Netanyahu sees a real opportunity and hope for change in the Middle East. And I think even some of these leaders in Saudi Arabia, some of the other Islamic nations may as well. Trump said that he was deeply moved by his visit to the wall, thanked the Israeli people, spoke of the unbreakable bond of friendship with Israel and America, expressed his desire for Israel to have peace. Says many things can happen now that could have never happened before. Spoke of his trip to Saudi Arabia. King Salman expressing his strong desire for peace. Of course, these are things that always happen publicly. You don't know what went on in the private meetings, but some of this stuff being said publicly is an indication that much the same was said privately. Trump mentioned that in his Israeli press conference just now that leaders in Saudi Arabia pledged to help eradicate terrorism and are working on the peace process. Wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it just be, you know me, I don't think Middle East peace is possible without somebody surrendering. I just don't. This has been going on how many thousands of years? Peace in the Middle East. I just never believed doctors, nurses, clean water, Red Cross units, and negotiations are gonna solve this. But what if the most progress ever made toward peace in the Middle East happens with Donald Trump as president? Can you imagine? It is going to be Unacceptable to these people. That some clunky outsider who doesn't know right from wrong, boorish from polite, somebody so unsophisticated, come in and command the respect of both sides. We'll wait and see. Time will tell. I know they'll rip. It won't be a legitimate peace, but it will. It will be the most amazing thing to see if something like that happens. Anyway, we'll keep a sharp eye. I've even heard. I hope this gets around. How about Donald Trump could be a one-man United Nations? We ought to have somebody start that narrative, get that meme floating around, gets people start tweeting that out. Donald Trump could be, and you know how that would drive him crazy out there. That would literally drive him crazy, because then Trump will come out against climate change as a one-man United Nations. No, Trump will never get the Nobel Prize. If Trump ever actually oversaw a legitimate peace, a laying down of arms between the Israelis and Palestinians and everybody else, they still would not give him the Peace Prize. There's no way. How dare you ask me? Do you think he'd get the Nobel Peace Prize? If they give it to a guy before, just 3 months after he's been inaugurated, give a guy like Obama a Peace Prize on the come, and here's a guy who expanded every war we're in, who did not close Club Gitmo, and they give him the Peace Prize. They ought to demand it back. But they won't. Here's Drew. Drew's in Dallas as we head back to the phones. Great to have you, Drew. How are things?
Doing great, Russia. Thanks for taking my call. And mega dittos from the great state of Texas.
Thank you. Thank you. Texas. And, it's Texas.
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 Now, I got to say, I was listening to your opening monologue this morning, and you just exactly described how I felt watching that speech over the weekend. It was two different presidents. I mean, the way they portray him in the media here and then the president that I saw over there. I mean, I finally saw a president that I could be proud of, not bowing as he gets off the plane. You know, the first lady not wearing a headdress, you know, maintaining her ethics and all that. It really encouraged me of the speech, and it's what I've been waiting to see in Trump all this time. I was just glad to finally see it.
Well, you know, it's I think it's fascinating, this contrast, and he's right. Drew, thanks. I addressed it in the first hour. Look, let me make the point further. I don't think there's any difference in the two Trumps. Maybe I didn't make this clear. I don't think Trump's different in Washington than he is there. The difference you have by tweeting. The Trump in Washington, compared to the Trump in this trip, what's the difference? The Trump in Washington is filtered by the media. I mean, folks, there's still, even today, and there's going to be another bombshell, I guarantee you. They're all excited Flynn's going to take the Fifth Amendment. Flynn's going to refuse to testify. That must mean Flynn's guilty. And then they're all excited that Comey's going to be testifying live and in person. Except Comey is testifying before the intelligence community in the Senate. He's not testifying before the Judiciary Committee. You might be saying, well, so what? What's the difference? Well, if he's testifying before the Judiciary Committee, it could be he's testifying about an actual crime. But if he's testifying before the intelligence community, that's a whole different purview there. But that doesn't matter. They're still excited. Comey's coming. So we've got Flynn. Obviously, Flynn not testifying. It means Trump's guilty. Trump did it. And Comey's coming up, and Comey's going to drop the hammer. Comey's going to unload on everything he knows. Comey is going to single-handedly get Trump impeached this week. They can't wait. They're all beside themselves. They've got more leaks. Bannon and Priebus left. Saudi Arabia came back to the United States. The media says that's because they did something to make Trump mad. They're soon to be fired. Both laid off. It's got to happen. Too much chaos. Administration says no, they were scheduled to come back after the big meetings that were in Riyadh. Nothing to see here. But the domestic reporting of Trump has not changed. Today, got it here in the stacks of stuff, all these horrible things, all rooted around this lie that Trump and the Russians colluded. They're not dropping it, not letting it go. But since Trump isn't in Washington, Trump's over there. He's making totally unrelated news that flies in the face of the narratives here. The narratives today and last week do not compute with the Trump that we've seen on this trip. My point is, Trump is Trump. He's the same guy wherever he is. But the reporting on him on this trip is nowhere near like the reporting on Trump when he's in Washington. There aren't any leaks. For example, we haven't yet seen a story quoting unnamed sources in the Saudi government saying that the king was profoundly embarrassed when Trump asked if there was a McDonald's nearby. There hasn't been a leak from one of the associates of the king saying, this guy Trump, he already insulted us wanting ketchup with his steak, and then he wanted 2 scoops of ice cream on the falafel. It's not done. This guy's an absolute barbarian. And there hasn't been a leak from an associate of King Salman telling somebody in a drive-by media that Trump looked at his son, the prince, and said, man, I hope you live a long time because your son's a nut job. We haven't had leaks like this about the Trump foreign trip. By the way, the Russians are saying that Trump did not say that. Sergei Lavrov said he didn't do any of this stuff that is being reported. Now, of course, who do we believe? It's a tough question. Do we believe the Russians or do we believe our own lying media? Believe the Russians believe the Russians hands down. Believe the Russians hands down. Now, why do we know that Trump called Comey a nut job? Well, because somebody that was in the meeting called, I forget which paper, New York Times or Washington Post, and they read, the Times still hasn't really seen the memo, still haven't seen the transcript of the account, but somebody, unnamed source, called the paper and read them what Trump said, and then Spicer got on there and basically confirmed it by saying, well, yeah, but this was a little out of context here and there. So everybody thinks that Trump called Comey a nut job. What if he didn't? We already have documented countless lies that the media has told about Rosenstein and about Comey requesting more money. Comey's trying to hide behind the curtain so that Trump won't notice him. Maybe he is a nut job. But that's just beyond the pale, Mr. Limbaugh. You wouldn't. The president would never. He's an enemy. I don't care what you say. True, Comey is a patriot. Comey's an American. Comey's on our side. You wouldn't dare kneecap one of your own guys to your enemy. Probably not. But we don't know for a fact that Trump did. We only think we know because it's been reported by how many unconfirmed anonymous sources? 2 scoops of ice cream. Trump's so selfish. Guests only get 1. The contrast is stark. The Trump on this trip and the Trump in Washington. My contention is that Trump is Trump. What's different is the reporting. We'll be back. Don't go away. One thing that I noticed, and it may not be quite politic to comment on it, because I could easily be misunderstood, but I'm going to give it a whirl. Did you notice how some of the Saudi government officials were eyeing Melania? Did you notice that? It was not with derision. It was not with contempt for not wearing a head. It was not. It was the exact opposite. They were mesmerized. Because practically all of them were looking up. Which is its own fantasy thing, depending on the guy. Christy in Minneapolis, welcome to the EIB network. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you, Rush?
Fine and dandy. Glad you called.
Yes, I just wanted to say I'm a long-time listener for 25 years, and I have a Rush baby in the car driving, and we're just coming back from the Notre Dame graduation, and I just wanted to make a point that I haven't heard on the media about the student walkout. There was about 75 kids that walked out, but when they walked out, No parents walked out, and the parents that were in the stadium all booed the students, which was interesting. I'm sure half of them didn't vote for Trump, but they did boo the students. It was very loud, and they all stood to welcome Pence, which I thought was a great showing for Pence.
So, Christy, your daughter graduated Notre Dame, and she's a Rush baby. Did I have that right?
No, she's not. She's not. My youngest is going to be a sophomore at Notre Dame.
Oh,
freshman this year. He's the Rush baby.
Oh,
He's the Rush baby.
Oh,
Yes.
but a Rush baby is at present at Notre Dame studying.
Yes, and he's going to all the Republican, like Ben Shapiro came there and Charles Murray, so he's going to see all those speakers. And he always credits you because he listened to you when he was tiny, when he was a baby.
Well, that's cool. I appreciate that. About the Notre Dame thing, correct me if I'm wrong. You said you were there. There were about 3,083 is the number I read, almost 3,100 students. And you said 75 walked out, right?
Right, yeah.
They become the news story. 75 walked out, turned their back, and walk out. They were booed, were they not?
They absolutely were booed by all the parents, and none of the parents walked out.
Right. Now, the news has made it look like all of everybody was opposed to Pence and embarrassed Pence and shut Pence down, and they were very much opposed to the rigid indoctrination that Pence was telling them in their committee. None of it true.
None of it true.
Except there were some protests, but they were tiny. 75 people out of 3,083.
Right, and they walked out. They just walked out. They didn't do anything. Of course, the Secret Service would have taken care of them really quickly, but it wasn't. They just turned and walked out. It wasn't even they didn't even stop. It wasn't like they turned their back. They just walked out.
Christy, I'm glad you go. Frankly, I tell you, if they could only come up with 75 people out of 3,100 and so forth, that's not a success, folks, as far as the left is concerned. That's a failure. Fastest 3 hours in media. It is Memorial Day week. And we're already through the first 2 hours of the program today. One more coming up. So happy to have all of you here today, as always. We'll be back here before you know it. All right, we're back. It's great to have you here, my friends. Rush Limbaugh, a brand new week of broadcast excellence. As usual, half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Our telephone number, if you want to be on the program, aimed at is 1-800-282-2882, and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. We have some audio now on the joint press conference between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump, and we kick off with Netanyahu. This was just moments ago in Jerusalem.
Mr. President, I appreciate the fact that you went to the Western Wall, and you're the first acting president who's done that. The people of Israel applaud you for it.
What a nut job. What a nut job. Doesn't Trump know that active presidents are not supposed to do that? If active presidents were supposed to do that, doesn't everybody know Obama would have done it? Anyway, here's more from... No, folks, I run the risk here. I was being totally facetious there. I was imagining what the media would say about... Because this can't stand. We're not supposed to have people praising Trump. Even Netanyahu, it's not supposed to happen. The Saudis are not supposed to like Trump. The Egyptians, nobody is supposed to like Trump. And when they do and they express it, circle the wagons time for the drive-bys. Here's more Bibi.
For the first time in many years, and Mr. President, for the first time in my lifetime, I see a real hope for change. The Arab leaders who you met yesterday could help change the atmosphere, and they could help create the conditions for a realistic peace. These are all great signs on your historic visit. It's a visit that I think has echoed down the ages, because the great Abraham Lincoln is reported to have said that there was no city on earth he so much desired to see as Jerusalem. Well, Mr. President Donald, there's no city on earth where you are more welcome than right here with us in Jerusalem.
That may actually be true. As far as it goes. Trump's turn to reply.
I was deeply moved by my visit today to the Western Wall. Words fail to capture the experience. It will leave an impression on me forever. We want Israel to have peace. But we are more than friends. We are great allies. We have so many opportunities in front of us. But we must seize them together. We must take advantage of the situation, and there are many, many things that can happen now that would never have been able to happen before, and we understand that very well.
And the final Trump soundbite from that presser.
I thank the Prime Minister for his commitment to pursuing the peace process. He's working very hard at it. It's not easy. I've heard it's one of the toughest deals of all, but I have a feeling that we're going to get there eventually, I hope. I'm certain we will have very productive discussions, and we're going to have very productive discussions, in my opinion, with the leaders of other nations also. And I feel strongly about that, because there's a lot of love out there, and people from all nations, even nations that you would be surprised to hear, they want to stop the killing. They've had enough. America stands ready to assist in every way we can.
It's just such a stark contrast to what we had with Barack Obama. Without commenting pro, con either way, just the stark contrast. The upbeat optimism for one thing. The pro-America aspect, the pro-America Israeli relationship. It's 180 degrees different, and I think for the good. I also, folks, we have a lot of sound bites here to support the theme here that the Democrats are getting worried to death over all this talk of impeachment and trying to walk it back. And again, not to overstress this, but I think it's crucially important. I'll give you another example. Listen, just a second here. Just to reiterate, the media, which runs the left now, not just in this country but around the world, the media has lied to the Democrats via their polling and via their reporting. They've lied repeatedly over who was going to win the election, and when the election didn't go the way they said it was going to go, they're now lying about the election being stolen by Trump and the Russians. And they have compounded the lie, and they have ostensibly supplied evidence when there isn't any. And they have created a tremendous number of genuinely enraged, seriously unbalanced mentally people that make up the Democrat voter base who are convinced. They're expecting Trump to be impeached. They're expecting the Democrats and the media to destroy Trump. They're expecting that with every witness that's called, Sally Yates was going to drop the bombshell. She was going to have the... Do you remember when the media was even shocked that Yates really had nothing to add to anything? And I remember when I saw it, I said, why wouldn't they know? She's got nothing. What, do they think that she's been withholding bombshell news for all of these weeks until it was time to testify and then she's going to let fly? I mean, the media was genuinely seemed saddened that she didn't have anything. And I'm asking myself, how can they not know? She's on their team. She's got warriors. She is a warrior. There's got to be somebody that can convey from her to the media. Everybody else, hey, gang, there's nothing here. Trump hasn't committed a crime. We don't have any evidence. But she went up there, and they were fully expecting the bombshell. They're expecting Comey to unveil every bit of evidence he's collected in his investigation. They're expecting Trump to go down this week. They were expecting Trump to go down last week. They're expecting Trump to go down next week. They're expecting somebody's going to come along here and drop the bomb of evidence because they've been told it's there. But the Democrats know there's no evidence. They know they've been lying to their people. The media knows it. So it's walk back time. That's why all this, gotta be careful, gotta walk back this talk of impeachment, because there is not a crime that has been committed. So there is real fear of what these people are going to do when that fateful day comes. That everybody has to say no evidence and no impeachment and no collusion. They just can't come out and say that, or they're going to have you think they were rioting now? We don't have any idea what's going to happen when these people once again realize they've been lied to and misled. The election was the first, and now this. Democrats and the media genuinely concerned because they've created this insanity. So the addendum, the Notre Dame speech by the Vice President Mike Pence. About 3,100 people, students, I guess it was. I'm not sure what that number comprises, if it's graduates and families, if it's the total number in the stadium or whatever. The bottom line, that's the number I was given or saw. 75 of them walked out. They were booed by the people who were there. The parents of these 75 did not walk out. Yet the media portrayed this as something the exact opposite. The media portrayed it as the entire graduating class walked out, that everybody turned their back on Pence and left, and that Pence was left with an empty stadium to speak to, right? Well, now, stick with me. That's what they think happened. The people who were not there. That's an example of the lying, and the exaggeration is taking place. So it created a tweet out there. Meathead, Rob Reiner, he tweeted, "We all need to follow the example of the Notre Dame grads and walk away from the most corrupt administration in our lifetime." And he's got a hashtag, Trump Russia. Trump Russia. That's why they're the most corrupt. Meathead doesn't know the truth. Meathead has fallen for the lie. Meathead believes there's collusion. So what do we have here? We have, on the one hand, reality. A paltry 75 people whimper out of there. No, their parents didn't go. The speech went on. It was not interrupted. It was not deterred. The vast majority of people stayed. All the parents stayed. On the other hand, a bunch of people in this country believe an outright lie, once again reported by the media. Now, which is more important, folks? At the end of the day, the truth and what really happened there, and the people who were there and know the truth, or the big lie over here? Will there be a reckoning? At some point, this is just a microcosm of what has been happening. A total lie. Now, some will say, well, Rush, people are going to believe the lie. I don't know, Rush. It's just bad. I mean, people believe in this stuff. I mean, they think that the whole class walked out and that Pence didn't get to finish his speech. And then there's no way we can compete against that. I mean, we may think we won, but that... Except it didn't happen. So it's not uncommon. I mean, there's examples of this every day. Reality versus reporting. But there will be a reckoning on this stuff. The things that they believe are not happening. The things that they believed happened didn't. They are being lied to. You would think at some point some of them would start to figure this out. Lied to about the election. Lied to about 2010, 2012, to the 14 midterms. Lied to about the presidential race. But they don't do that, do they? They don't think they're being lied to. They think things are being stolen from them or things are corrupt or what have you. But it's dangerous because the entire Democrat base, which includes New York City, these judges, look at these judges that put the stay on Trump's 2 executive orders limiting travel. Why'd they do it? Well, it's not because the executive order is unconstitutional, because both of them are. Both of them, Trump is the executive branch. Trump can fire Mueller if he wants to. Trump can fire the independent counsel. Trump can fire anybody. Trump is the executive branch. And these investigations are all going to happen under the purview of the executive branch. He has total power. He doesn't have some of the power. He doesn't have a little bit of the power. The president has all of the power of the executive branch, every ounce of it. Scalia has so stated in a Supreme Court, was actually a dissent in a ruling on the executive council law, which not everybody has agreed that Scalia was right. Because there can be the president does have a little bit of power, some power. It's not that he shares it with the attorney general, and the judiciary doesn't get some of his power. He doesn't get some of theirs. The executive branch doesn't get some of the legislative branch's power. His is exclusive to him, the executive branch. He runs it, the president, not just Trump, it's the president. He can fire an independent counsel or an FBI director any day, any time he wants for no reason. He does not have to give anybody a reason. But that's a sidecar. Go back to these judges. The judges did not rule on Trump's executive orders and the merits of the law. You know what they did? They said, well, we remember Trump during the campaign said he wanted to ban all Muslims from America. That means Trump is a bigot. That means Trump is a pervert. That means Trump is anti-religious. That means Trump is a pig. He's a horrible person. And we said, never heard of judges concocting rulings on statements candidates made during a campaign. Okay, now how does what those clowns believe? Those judges are also part of the insane left, a product of lies and misinformation for who knows how many years now. The lies and misinformation about Republicans, about conservatives that these people believe. And these are among the cream of the crop. These are judicial scholars, essentially. These judges, they are not rabble. They are elites, and they believe this stuff. They believe lies. How do their rulings about Trump's statements on the campaign hating Muslims, how does that square with these past 2 days? Trump hates Muslims? Trump wants to ban all Muslims. Trump is a bigot. Trump, how does this square? It doesn't. On the one hand, we have reality over. On the other, we have liberalism. We have the left. And there isn't any common ground here. And I'm just telling you, if Trump sticks to his guns, the day of reckoning is going to come for them, not for him. If he sticks to his guns. Because there's an entire majority of this country who is with Trump, but are not insane. They are not lunatics. They have not been lied to. And they, to date, have not abandoned Trump. Things built on false foundations, don't care what they are, the foundation crumbles. A flood, an earthquake, too much weight. And I'm telling you, everything the left is building on its foundation is flimsy because the foundation is nothing but lies and distortions. It's like Ronaldus Magnus believed that the Soviet Union would eventually implode on the weight of its own immorality. This kind of lying, stinking disinformation is not the kind of thing that is triumphant. It's destroying these people. It's eating them alive. Raw hatred and rage. Literally eating them alive. You'll see. Stick with this long enough, and they're going to subsume themselves. I have to take a brief timeout. Don't go away. We'll be back. Let me squeeze a phone call in, folks. We head back to the big show. Cleveland, Ohio. Lisa, it's great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I can't believe after 25 years I finally got through.
Listen to this, all these people, 25 years.
Honored.
This is fabulous. I love you so much. I really do. Thank
great.
you.
Well, I love you, and I love everything you do to keep me sane, because listening to the mainstream media will literally set my hair on fire. But I'm confused about something, and I know that you'll be able to enlighten me. I'm confused about the whole Russian collusion stuff. First of all, even if it happened, what's the big deal? What's the crime? I thought that was called opposition research. When NBC released the Billy Bush tape, and wasn't that to affect the election? Wasn't that the whole point of releasing that and releasing what supposedly happened in
exactly
some
right.
hotel room?
The release was designed to take out the Trumpster.
Right. So I don't understand. Even if somebody on the Trump campaign said something, it was what's his face that used password as his password. I mean, all they did was expose the truth, and it is not as if they
wait. Who are you talking about here? Password exposed what truth?
Exposed the truth about what was in the Democratic emails about what they were trying to.
That. Now wait a second. Wait, that a whole new avenue on that has opened up now.
Oh, well, but I just
that does not involve the Russians.
Oh, okay.
But let's stick with it as to the relation. Let's say it was the Russians, which it wasn't. We know that it wasn't. Podesta was victimized by a phishing attack.
Right.
It is how that information got to WikiLeaks. The Democrats want you to believe that the Russians were the source for all of the Podesta emails, giving that stuff to the editors at WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks has denied it, and there are other people who have alternative theories about how it happened. But there isn't... I know what you're getting at. Okay, even if the Russians did that, isn't that just like opposition research? I mean, if the Democrat stuff ended up at WikiLeaks, I mean, why is that probably a crime, you're asking? Which is an interesting question. Look, hang on here. Lisa, I've got a break here at the bottom, but we will continue this when we get back. Back to Lisa in Cleveland. Lisa, I know what you're getting at here. Even if the Russians did this, even if the Russians were the ones that got hold of Podesta's emails, and even if they did give them to WikiLeaks, what's the big deal, you say?
Yep.
Well, a big deal there would be that this is a foreign government attempting to show preferential treatment for one candidate over another, except that they did try to hack the RNC and they failed to get through. But that I think that may be one of the things that believers here are relying on, that the Russians, that's how they tampered. But nobody has shown any evidence, Lisa, and they may never be able to, that the Podesta emails had any meaningful effect on Hillary losing.
Right.
There's really no way to quantify that.
What is the actual crime that someone's being accused of? That's what I don't get. Like, what is the crime that they're accusing Trump of?
None. There isn't a crime.
I don't understand it.
Well, because it's a public smear. It is a
right.
The broad-based allegation is collusion, and since Russia is an enemy, they want to be able to say it's treasonous and thus impeachable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm really worried, though, about some of these other broadcasters. I sometimes, for fun, watch CNN in the morning, and that Chris Cuomo, I think he's going to need medical assistance at some point.
Well,
he is so rabid and he's so hysterical that I realize he's trying to get his brother elected to president at some point, but it's really, I almost feel sorry for him.
Yeah,
he's gotten so bad.
Yeah, he's the Fredo, of the Cuomo family.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty funny. Well,
he's the guy that takes the grandkids out fishing and never returns. Chris Cuomo actually said two things that are just literally stupid last week. One, he said, to mention there is no evidence is sabotage of the investigation. Anybody going on CNN claiming, hey, wait a minute, you people have no evidence of any collusion. He says that is sabotaging the investigation. The second thing he said was that if you're going to say there's no proof of any allegation, you have to prove it. He said, you need to show proof that there's no proof. Now, Lisa, that is not possible. You can't prove two negatives, much less one.
Right.
And it is not the principle on which the American judicial system is built. The accused do not have to prove anything. The accusers have to prove it. So if the media thinks there's been collusion, it's up to them to prove it. There isn't any proof. There isn't any crime. That's why they're walking back impeachment. But the new avenue here, folks, back here, up here, second printer because as a new avenue. Are you aware, ladies and gentlemen, named Seth Rich? Seth Rich worked at DNC. Seth Rich, don't fail me now, dates, last fall, October 10th, November, he was murdered, DNC worker. The police said it was a botched robbery. He still had his wallet, his car keys, lottery tickets, whatever else. Others are claiming that he was murdered because he was the leak from the DNC to WikiLeaks. And this story is now starting to get legs. That Seth Rich was murdered. It was a contract hire killing because he was leaking to WikiLeaks. He was the one. May have been a Bernie supporter, and the only colluding and rigging here, folks, is the Democrat primary election. The DNC rigged it against. Do you know that there's a class action lawsuit against the DNC over this now? There is a massive lawsuit against the DNC by Bernie supporters for him getting shafted. Seth Rich claims to have been, or they are people claiming, Kim.com, the noted hacker, has now come forward and said he was working with Seth Rich to get the documents to WikiLeaks. That link is at the Drudge Report today. Kim.com, a renowned, world-famous computer hacker. Loved and adored by high-tech people for a host of reasons. In fact, I didn't even know this, because I don't tweet, I don't go to... Well, we have a Twitter account. We use it to promote RushLimbaugh.com on our Facebook page. But in terms of, tweeting, the place is a refuse for human debris, if you ask me. Twitter is. It's so much. Folks, I'm going to tell you something. I would bet you, wild guess here, that over half of the traffic on Twitter is not real people. It's botnets. It's fake accounts. I know they exist. We've tracked them down. We've identified them as they relate to us. Attacks on us. I think a lot of social media is fake, is not real people. It's made to look like real people, and it's dominated by the left. I think it's just another area of the American political system where the media makes it look like everybody's a Democrat. Everybody's a Democrat. Everybody's a liberal. When it's not factually correct. Anyway, back in March, I was talking about Kim.com here on the big program. There were allusions to the fact, even last fall, that, there were 30,000 Hillary emails from the 60,000 on her server that still are not accounted for. She gave 30,000 to the investigators, claiming that those were the ones that are relevant. The other 30,000, she deleted them because they had nothing to do with it. About Hillary's daughter's wedding and wedding reception, who got 2 scoops ice cream and who didn't. And there were things about yoga lessons, and who the Clintons thought were nut jobs. She didn't turn that stuff over, but those emails are somewhere. Kim.com claimed to know either where they were and could get them or know somebody who did. And I'm talking about this in the air. I didn't know this. But back in March, Kim.com tweeted me. He said, "Dear Rush Limbaugh, one day I will tell you on your show what really happened. Will be a very entertaining hour." And I didn't know about it until today when one of my webmasters, we powerful, influential members of the media have people like webmasters and stuff, told me about this. So Mr.com, I just found out about it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ignore your tweet. I didn't know that it had happened. But this is a whole new evidence. Folks, it's right now, it's conspiracy theory status. The Seth Rich murdered because it won't go away. It just won't go away. That's about as much we can say right now. I have some audio sound bites here on all these Democrats walking back impeachment. I didn't get to them. Maybe save them tomorrow. And a whole stack here on the Democrat Party cracking up, primarily in California, but everywhere. The state California Democratic leader's a guy named John Burton, and he led a charge at a Democrat Party convention after the F-bomb with the middle finger extended. F Donald Trump! You got thousands of people standing for F Donald Trump with their middle fingers extended. Something about the F-bomb and other obscenities is becoming standard, ordinary, everyday operating fare for today's Democrats. Here we have John Podesta calling the Comey firing laughable. He's continuing to blame Comey for the Clinton election loss, but still mad that Comey got fired. He's losing his mind about what happened. And he's out there claiming he was a victim of a Russian hack, and he wasn't. Tom Perez, who heads the Democrat National Committee, was heckled when he spoke to California Democrats because he wasn't obscene enough. He wasn't ludicrous left-wing extreme enough. And this guy is setting records for extremism. This is the same place where the California Democratic Party chairman telling protesters, "Shut the F up," when he was speaking.